Well, welcome back, everybody. We've enjoyed a number of good weeks where Jeffrey, our president's been interviewing various golf professionals from the PGA Tour to the Champions Tour. A lot of fascinating conversations about what it means to walk with Christ and be at the level of a professional golfer. It's fascinating. So here we find ourselves this upcoming weekend, Good Friday, Monday, Thursday, Good Friday, Easter Sunday, where we celebrate and worship our King who gave his life in an atoning death, burial, and resurrection. And so it's a special time together. This Friday's devotional entitled Dead Then Alive. It's often that when we're playing golf, we hit a ball behind a tree and we walk up to it and we go, well, that's dead. And you have to, take relief, take penalty stroke, and then, get after it and make whatever you make. This past week, when we were glued to the television watching this roller coaster of a Masters, especially on Sunday, we saw a lot of highs, saw a lot of lows, saw Rory hit some shots that were extraordinary. 7-iron from 15 comes to mind. 7-iron when he absolutely had to have it on 17. His wedge shot on 18 in the playoff. But he also hit some shots that, a little bizarre, a little peculiar. His pitch on 13 that landed in the creek. These things, and so we were living with him, riding that roller coaster. The two shots that come to my mind are the blocked driver on 5, where he found himself behind some towering trees. And as you well know, 5, the green, is diabolical. For him to get that ball hoisted that high, that quick, and make it to the green was just amazing. I thought he was dead. And then he pulled his 3-wood on 7. And again, even the on-course commentator said, we think he should go under the limbs low, try to get into the front bunker. And then he just took a mighty slash, again, hoisting that ball up very quickly, made it to the green, and not only got on the green, but he actually got close, rolled it right over the hole. So pretty extraordinary stuff. But in both those occasions, we would probably use the language, he was, at least at first appearance, he was dead. But then, of course, he found life and was able to make par on both those holes, 5 and 7. Could have made birdie easily on 7. But all that to say, when we use the language of dead on a golf course, we're using it metaphorically. When we talk about Jesus the Christ, 2,000 years ago, being crucified and hanging on Calvary's tree as an atoning death for our sin, and then being buried, we mean he was literally dead, not metaphorically dead. He was dead. And then 3 days later, Easter Sunday morning, by the Spirit of God, the Father raised the Son to an immortal, embodied existence. And now he's ascended and coronated and sits at the right hand of the Father, ruling the universe as the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. Well, today's devotional talks about that. In 1 Corinthians 15, the Apostle Paul is having to correct some erroneous ideas, some false, bad theology, as it were. There were those who were teaching there was no such thing as a resurrection at all. And then consequently, sadly, tragically, there were those in the church who were believing that and espousing that and, sharing that with others, that there's no such thing as a resurrection. So the Apostle Paul, in an effort to correct that, is writing in 1 Corinthians 15 that of first importance, Jesus Christ was crucified, dead and buried according to the Scriptures. And then he goes on to explain that there were eyewitnesses, and then he goes on to use irrefutable logic, showing that their argument is fallacious. So today's devotional focuses just on that, those 3 categories where Paul is substantiating the real death, atoning death, burial, and then the supernatural resurrection from the dead, and that's on offer to us. A future bodily, immortal existence in a new heavens and new earth for those who follow Christ. And Paul's going to appeal to three different categories. Old Testament scriptures, that everything that happened to Christ was in accordance with Scripture. And of course, by that he meant the Old Testament. And then secondly, he appeals to eyewitnesses, to Peter and to James and to Thomas, to himself. But then interestingly, he said, look, there's over 500 people, most of them who are still alive, who will tell you, we've saw him, we've interacted with him. Ask us, we'll tell you about it. And then finally, he's going to go through the logic using a reductio ad absurdum argument in the first part of 1 Corinthians 15, showing them, okay, well, if there's no such thing as a resurrection, then Christ hasn't been raised from the dead. And if Christ hasn't been raised from the dead, then these are the consequences of that. And so he basically, for argument's sake, assumes the premises of his opponents and then shows them how absurd it is to believe that. So I just want to encourage you to read this devotional, spend some good time with it. And I also want to say, most importantly, I hope you have the richest, most meaningful, celebratory, happy Easter of your entire life. God bless, and we'll see you next Friday.